So the reason why we think is that we have this process for regulating energy efficiency that isn't intuitive. And if you were thinking about how you would actually get to CO2 reductions, which happen in operations, and if you were to design a process to do that, you wouldn't actually probably design it where you only checked for energy efficiency once before the building was built, before probably you were even tendering a lot of your drawings and based on a bunch of assumptions of what might happen. That's probably not, if you were really concerned about GHG reductions, you wouldn't regulate your buildings this way. But this is the way we currently do regulate our buildings. What we would probably do if we were really concerned about GHG reductions is we would make explicit targets up front in the development permit process probably, and then not care what happens in the middle and maybe just check it at the end. That's one of the things that is sort of the green building movement is wrestling with right now and has been raised at our committee level. So energy is an awkward fit within our building code right now. This is a bit of an eye chart. I don't expect you to read it, but what I'm trying to show to you here is that we are trying to quantify all of this. We're trying to identify all of the issues, the potential GHG reductions, and at the end of this process, we'll hopefully come out with a graph which will identify the issues, the opportunities, the tools, the potential reductions based on that, and allow us to design a work program moving forward that can hopefully start checking some of these things off the list. We're grouping these things roughly into 5 program areas in terms of the development of new tools to deal with GHG reduction. We're looking at things like quality assurance and user engagement. The labeling of buildings is a key tool that we're looking at right now. Right now, consumers have no idea when they're buying a building how energy efficient it is, right? But you do when you buy most major other purchases in your life, like your car, like a fridge, like a laundry machine. If you could actually see an EnerGuide label for your apartment when you bought it, you might actually make different decisions. You might actually value that asset differently. The other thing about it too is that we actually don't really, up until recently from a couple of studies, is we don't have a very good idea about how our building portfolio is actually performing. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And so by providing tools not only to consumers but to ourselves in terms of better data management, that will be a huge step forward in terms of helping us develop tools moving forward. Another thing that we're trying to do here, and don't try to understand this slide right now, but one thing that the development industry hates more than a loudmouth bureaucrat like myself is unpredictability, right? And so one of the key things we've heard moving forward is that by providing a strategic plan that identifies, sorry, I'm reading a lot here, that provides, notice when we are going to change our building code and how we're going to change our building code and what incentives we're going to offer and how those incentives will be structured so that they will set you up for success in future iterations of the building code or the zoning and development bylaw. A structured approach that actually affects, that could have effects on land value, but at least is predictable. Because a lot of the things that we hear right now is that you're constantly throwing things at us, and it's hurting our ability to speculate on the market. So that's one of the things that we're trying to wrestle with and develop. I think I'm running a little over time here, so I'm going to try to hurry through the last bits here. But in terms of developing a comprehensive strategy for existing buildings, one of the things that we face is that there really isn't a regulatory model around existing buildings right now. We don't regulate building retrofits from an energy perspective. And we have to be very modest when we do so, because when people are retrofitting buildings, it's not because they have bags of cash sitting around and that they want to figure out a way to spend it. It's because sometimes something's gone wrong in their buildings and they have to renovate their buildings, right? And they may not have resources to do it. So we have to be very modest with our regulation. We have to look in terms of 2 to 3 year paybacks in terms of what we're asking of developers, probably when we're looking at regulation on its own. If we can bring incentives into the mix, we can expand the scope of that regulation because we're reducing the financial pain or burden that our regulation is causing. And if we can actually also include financing tools that completely cover the costs and finance the upgrades themselves from the energy savings they provide, then we can be much more bullish in terms of our regulation and get much more aggressive. So this is our strategy moving forward, and we're starting modestly in the fall, and then hopefully moving aggressively over time. We have 3 jumps in the building code between now and 2020, and this is hopefully how we see rolling things out. And then also moving from a passive regulation context where we only capture the permits of people who come to us now with regulation, but moving to a more active regulation framework, whereby, if you own a building, you have 5 years to upgrade it and lower your GHGs, that kind of thing. Those are types of things that are being done in New York City right now, for example. So I'm going to go past this. An interesting piece of work we're doing right now is developing financing tools. As I talked about, these are quite interesting things that cities typically haven't gotten into in the past, but that basically they're structured around providing low interest loans for energy efficiency upgrades that allow for the energy efficiency savings to pay for those loans. We have a couple different acronyms here because, as you know, as a bureaucrat, you love acronyms and you can't deal with anything that isn't an acronym. So PACE is a program for homes called Property Assessed Clean Energy, or it's more familiarly known in Canada as local improvement charges, but using that mechanism to finance energy efficiency upgrades on private property. We're looking at partnering with utilities to provide financing on your utility bill, and then also working with the commercial lending sector to provide green loans to multi-unit residential buildings. That's kind of the structure of the PACE program. I won't get into it right now. This is our work program in terms of developing it. But I think I'm going to park it there. How much time do I have?
15 minutes, so 10 minutes for questions and 5 minutes for closing.
Okay, yeah. All right, so in terms of closing out then, these are some of the other strategies that have come out of our working group and some of the work that we've done over the past 18 months moving forward for creating a framework for buildings. One of the things we've heard clearly, not surprisingly, from the industry is that we have to incent innovation. And that's something we've been terrible at as a city, really. I mean, we've been a regulate first jurisdiction, and there's reasons for that. I mean, we're cash poor and regulatory rich, and it's also it's also a way to capture the most of the market, right? I mean, you can roll out an incentive program that only reaches 10% of the building market, and it costs more money and more staff time than it would to roll out a regulation. I've talked a little bit about creating an information framework for sharing and disclosure. We've heard strongly that conservation first is something that we should focus on instead of the deployment of more renewable energy. A comprehensive look at energy supply, so that a little bit what Sean was talking about in terms of the deployment of new district energy systems, creating a clear roadmap for change. And then finally, I think the most important one here too is that we have to start engaging the occupant more. I mean, as a city, we're typically gone at occupancy, and there has been studies to show that you can change the energy use within a building by not doing anything except for providing coaching and support to the occupants themselves by as much as 33%. So, that's a huge potential source of savings that is lying untouched, both by regulators right now, but it's being somewhat addressed by utilities. But it's something that we're probably going to have to get into if we're going to take these goals seriously. So to close out with, I guess I would just there's an African proverb out there that I like to quote. And before you ask, no, I'm not African, despite my appearance. And these are some solar panels that are actually on Parcel 6 in the Olympic Village, and the African proverb goes: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we have to go a long way together fast, and that requires something that we haven't done before, and it requires concise leadership. So I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions, you can throw those open now and flag Amy down.
And Sean's still here too, so if you have questions about the climate protection stuff.